If you've ever felt that wave of shame after a binge or out of control moment with food, that crushing feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with you, this conversation is for you. Today, I'm talking with licensed mental health expert Kyira Wackett about shame, what it is, why it keeps us stuck, and most importantly, how to work with it instead of letting it drive your decisions with food. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listeners. I'm so excited to bring a guest interview with you today for the podcast. Today, I have Kyira Wackett with me. She is a licensed therapist with over 10 years experience in mental health, specializing in shame, burnout, and anxiety. And I was introduced to Kyira. I've had the opportunity to be on her podcast a couple of times. Untethering Shame is her podcast. And we had such amazing conversations about shame and binge eating, about the shame that is so prevalent when we eat in ways that just don't line up with who we really want to be. And so I wanted to invite her to come and be on the podcast so that all of you could get to know her and just so we could have it just even more conversations about shame. And I am just confident that you will hear something today that you are able to take with you into your own experience. Because as humans, we all experience shame, but so much of it, at least for myself, I have so much lived experience of trying to get away from the shame and trying to hide from the shame, and that shame in that hiding where it just gets bigger and bigger. And so, Kyira, so glad to have you with us. And let's just start. Let's just dive in with, tell us your definition of shame and how you think about it.
I love this. And yeah, listeners, I'm so excited to be here because we were joking a little bit before we hit record that I feel like Jane and I could get in a room on any topic and just have an amazing conversation. So I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this sacred community that you all have built and the trust that you all have with each other and with the work that Jane's doing. If we're thinking about shame, I think probably at this point, people have heard the term. Listeners, you know it's out there. I think Brene Brown kind of hit it on the head years ago, and it was a force that swept in, and suddenly people were using shame constantly. Now, there's good and bad in that. We've brought it to the surface. We've said shame is a thing. It's real. It affects people. Sometimes what happens, though, is that we kind of muddy the waters on what are we actually talking about and what really fits in the bucket on shame. And so the way I'll often describe it to people is that shame is a very specific fear, and it is the fear of not being worthy of love, connection, and belonging. And so there's many times that people will talk about, okay, well, what's guilt? What's shame? How do we differentiate it? Really, in that context, what people will often refer to as guilt being something that we did that we feel bad about. The key piece, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is it trips up a value. It trips up something that is important to us that maybe we didn't live in alignment with, and we feel bad about it. I lied and I don't like that. I cheated. I stole something. It doesn't feel good. And I want to do something about that. Shame is the belief I myself am broken, bad, the problem. I can't fix it if I'm the issue. I just have to learn to deal with being the issue. And then because I am so afraid that that issue is going to get in the way of being loved and having connection and belonging, I have to do whatever I can to hide that from anyone else seeing it. So it becomes this fear that really leads us to mask and perform and hide and create different aspects of ourselves depending on the places and the spaces that we're in.
Yeah. Oh, so powerful. So before we dive in further, I'm curious just for your own, like, how did you get interested in the topic of shame?
Yeah. So there was a time where before Brene Brown was actually really big in the circuit and talking about shame on a broader scale, she was helping bring some of her research to different universities and leading some continuing education or developmental education courses. And there's some different theories that really align with the work that she was doing early on. And so in the midst of getting my master's, I was specializing in eating disorders and trauma. So I was working with clients day in and day out with some form of eating disorder diagnosis or struggle with food. And then typically there was some trauma or other mental health diagnosis they were dealing with as well. So as I'm going through my training, as I'm getting all these pieces, she starts introducing this concept of the shame triangle, or these three defenses that come up. I think I actually was the one that started hearing it as a triangle somewhere else. I don't even know if that's the language she used, but now it's all one big piece. So the thing I remember was her talking about these defenses that were really interpersonal strategies for disconnection and protection. And this worked hand in hand with a few other theories that I had really resonated with in my training, because so much about the work we do in the therapy room is about helping people understand interpersonal dynamics and stories and how that relates to our view of ourselves and how we connect with other people. And so when this came out and I'm doing this training and I'm watching these three strategies, which are called moving towards, meaning when I feel shame, when I feel like there's something wrong with me, I feel uncomfortable, vulnerable, whatever it is, I'm going to move towards you. Meaning I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to people please. I'm going to make myself so necessary in your life that you couldn't possibly leave me. The second was moving away. That's the, I'm going to distance myself. I'm going to push myself away from you. That could be the person making jokes to keep you at an arm's length. That could be the person that suddenly falls off the face of the earth for a few weeks and doesn't text you back. That could also be addiction and disconnection through other media, things like that. And then there was the third one, which is moving against, where people will become aggressive. They feel bad, so they want somebody else to feel bad, or they get that really reactive defense coming out. And as I'm hearing this and I'm circling through sort of all of my client notes, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the underbelly of what I'm trying to help people with. And I had seen that there was more than the eating disorder symptoms. I had at that point been in recovery for my own eating disorder for several years. I knew there was something deeper, but I couldn't articulate it in this very concrete way until that came into my life. And when I saw that, I was like, all hands on deck. I am going deep down into shame. And the more I looked at it, I said, gosh, that's trauma. That's everything we carry after trauma. The more you see it in anxiety and depression, shame was this omnipresent piece. It was like glitter that had touched every facet of mental health. And that really led me to say, if I'm going to treat people with any sense of efficacy, I need to go deeper than, well, how do I stop you from binging? How do I help you tolerate distress so that you can leave your house when you're anxious? We have to figure out how to address the stories underneath. And from there, everything just continues to compound and get richer and richer.
Yeah. Oh, so powerful. So what is somebody listening? I'm sure everybody listening is like, yes, I can relate to the sense of shame, whether it is constant, whether it's just with me all of the time, kind of underneath the surface 24 hours a day, or whether it's specifically after I do something. Maybe it's after I eat a lot of food, kind of this sense of shame. What would you, trying to think of the question, what would you want the listeners to know? Like the biggest thing, if they were to take one thing away from our conversation with shame that they could apply to their own experience, their own life, understanding shame, whatever that is, what is like the biggest takeaway you would want somebody to have?
Two of them. So the first is really just a fact, which is you have shame. Shame is a universal experience. It is impacting the way you live your life. And the reason being, because as humans, we require connection and belonging. And because that is a necessary thing, our fear brain, which is designed to keep us safe, is going to work to mine for any barriers, limits, triggers, anything that's going to stop us from getting that need met. So just by understanding that you're a human being that requires connection and belonging, you are going to experience shame because your brain is looking for threats for you getting that need. The second thing is that the majority of our shame is perpetuated by us getting confused and trying to control what's out of our control. And so shame really is kind of a master of disguise to always get you looking at something else. So you look over here and it's like, oh, wait a minute, we're going over here. And then you jump over here and it's always going to hop to the next thing, because really all it's doing is moving your external locus of control from inside to outside. I have to be good enough to be loved. I have to be worthy of connection and belonging. And so we start to confuse, well, I might want to be a good person. I might want to be kind. I want to be generous. I might want to be a leader in my community. But is the root because that's what my values are? Or is the root because if I'm not that, I'm afraid no one will want me? And so again, you have shame. And most often the reason it's getting power is because your locus of control, or where you're focusing your energy, is on things you actually can't control. Your past, your future, and everybody else. Those things are out of our control.
Yeah, so powerful. So when I'm in a moment of shame, if I'm, well, let's even slow it down. How would I, or might I know that I'm in a moment of shame, that I'm experiencing shame? If somebody's listening, and they're kind of wondering, do I experience shame? Well, yes, I probably do, but what are maybe some of the identifying factors of shame?
Yeah. So when people are wondering whether or not they have shame and how often it shows up, there's 2 exercises I think can be really helpful. So one, just sit down, listeners, with a sheet of paper and a pen, pencil, whatever you like. And I want you to write down all of your self-talk for the day. Everything you've said to yourself. And that could be, I look good today. I look like crap today. I enjoyed my breakfast. I ate too much at breakfast. I got that task done. I'm proud of myself. Or I should have gotten more done. Just all the little thoughts. It can be helpful if you go back and you think about the actual tasks, just the neutral bullet points of what your day looked like. And then just notice, what's the conversation you're having with yourself? That's a really key way to start to look at how you're talking to yourself, because shame is this internal dialogue. It is this other part of your brain that is trying to keep you safe. It thinks that by making you go, oh, that wasn't good enough, that wasn't good enough, that wasn't good enough, we're bringing awareness so we can correct and fix and make everything okay. So that's one thing you can do. The second thing that I often think about is look at the behaviors you're doing that you're upset about, that you don't like about yourself. So obviously people listening to this have in some way, shape, or form identified that their relationship with food has brought them pain in some way. They feel out of control, they're over controlled. Really what we're saying in all of this is we feel some sort of shame around our body and food. And we don't quite know how to regulate that relationship. But it could be other things. You're upset at yourself because you stayed up too late. You were binge watching TV. You were lazy, quote unquote, and you didn't clean up after dinner and all the dishes are still there. Or you blew off a phone call, whatever it is. Notice those behaviors that you have some negative feelings around. And then same thing, I want you to write out all of the conversation in your head. What are the things that you're saying to yourself? So when you ate that bagel, what was your immediate response in your head? Was it, well, it was only enjoyable because I only ate the allotted proportion that I decided I'm allowed to have based on my calorie intake? Or is it, I feel like shame came up and said, I ate too much, I ate too fast, I didn't enjoy it, or I shouldn't have had a bagel? All of those pieces, again, either just thinking about the dialogue or connecting to these behaviors or these experiences we hate or we don't like or cause pain. And then again, coming back to the dialogue, are going to start to bring awareness to the conversation that you aren't even realizing is happening all day long in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say somebody does that and they have just pages upon pages full of, that's not good enough. You messed up. You're not doing this right. You should be doing so much more. I can't believe you did that. You ate too much. All of these are all things that would have been on my papers. So somebody does this exercise, they have page upon page of all of, kind of this negative talk in their head. Where do they go from here? Real quick, if you're tired of doing this alone and you want support as you work on your relationship with food, The Binge Eating Breakthrough book experience starts on February 17th. It's 7 weeks working through my book together as a group, meeting live on Tuesdays. It's $49, replays are included, and you don't need to have read the book to join. All the details are at janepilger.com/book-experience. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So there's obviously, listeners, I think, having been in my own trap with food and body image, that I think I will always in some way, shape, or form have a toe in and out of, because I think that's what it means to be human. Many of us have this mindset that we're going to get these tasks, we're going to do it, and we're going to solve it and fix it and move on. And so some of you right now are going to be like, great question, because as soon as I get this next step, I'm going to do all the things and I'm not going to have it. And this is going to be the key, and I'm never going to struggle with food again.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say real quickly, this is work that takes years and is never done. So when I talk to people about the work I do, I work on shame resilience. Resilience means when and if and however long shame is in my life, I develop a sense of self-efficacy, tools, and support to be able to move forward and through that without getting stuck or without being stuck as long. So I'm going to give you this next step, listeners, and I want you to remind yourself, I'm not telling you that in the 30 minutes of this conversation, we're going to solve all this pain. That's incredibly dismissive to your story, to reduce everything to a couple of steps and say, well, now you should be fine.
Yes, so powerful.
So when you look at that list, I used to do it in therapy groups, and I would actually have people exchange their lists with other people, which is a huge vulnerability risk. Obviously, that's really hard to have somebody look at it. But what we would do is we would actually have the other person read it aloud so we could hear the thoughts that are happening in our head read out loud to us. Because there's something to be said about the emotional experience of actually witnessing what that must be like and feel like. So if you don't have someone you want to do that with, or that's asking too much of you right now, just go back and read that list once you're done. And I just want you to imagine you at 5 or 8 or 10 being told all of these rules. Because I don't know each of you. I don't know the age it started, but I can guarantee you that the basic formation of these rules and these beliefs about yourself started when you were a kid. So I want you to go back and think about that. And I want you to just name what the emotions are that come up. For me, I think a lot about, I'll feel this just almost like a scared feeling. I feel hot. I feel angry, but the anger is overridden more by a fear. And this idea of just this kid that feels so broken and so like floating. I don't even know how to describe it fully, but there's this physiological feeling of just kind of not being rooted to myself. And the reason that's important is we are empathy devoid of our own experience. We don't pause to go, gosh, that must be really hard. To, again, if we just use food, my mom, who was addicted to crack cocaine and many other drugs for years, she and I had a lot of conversations around how much, obviously, no one would want that either, that addiction. But she said, I do feel sad for you sometimes because you have to face your substance every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
I don't have to have drugs in my life. You have to have food. And so even if we're not even going to go back to your 5 or 8 or 10-year-old self, just think about the stories you're telling yourself every day. And I want you to imagine how hard that must be for a person to carry themselves through every day, having to engage with something that they have such a painful relationship with, feeling all these feelings about themselves. And no matter what they do, it's never good enough. And we start to develop some empathy around that. The next piece that we would do, and this often requires some form of external support. I think it's much more helpful to have a coach, a therapist, somebody that's trained in this, particularly when we're talking about food, because even working as a therapist and now doing coaching, I can tell you, even people in my field aren't always equipped to do this work. And I know you've seen this too, Jane. You've seen people that have no business talking about food that do. And so I would encourage you to consider what resources might be available. But the next layer that I would invite people to consider is your shame is coming from a place of protection. So if we go back and we think about that child self, if we go back, and a lot of the questions I would ask somebody in the room would start to get at, when do you first remember feeling these feelings? When do you first remember hearing, I'm not good enough, I'm fat, I'm lazy, I should have dot, 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 whatever it is? Let's go back and let's think about that. What was that like for you? Who were the messages coming from? And we'll do a lot of mining for that information. Again, quite often it's going to be a childhood experience. And so we're going to assume, for the sake of this, everybody's going to be able to go back to being a child or a teenager and they start to develop this. Probably one of their main sources is going to be a primary caregiver or key adult figure in their life, even if it wasn't a parent or a main caregiver. It's going to be somebody important, and then it will get exacerbated by kids and other adults and culture and all the things. Well, when that child feels so insecure, feels so unworthy of love, of connection, of belonging, it's going to develop a defense system. This is something I like to think about as a protective part. And I know some of you've heard more as Jane's talking about parts and different parts of the self. This is going to be familiar to you, just maybe through a different lens. That protective part's job is to make sure that that child never feels that pain and that vulnerability again. That protective part is going to be the emotional eating. That's going to be more of a moving away. That's a way to distance from that. That protective part is going to make you a silent people pleaser. That protective part is going to make you the angsty teenager or the rebel person that's always in conflict. Whatever that is, it's going to say, here's the system we need to develop to protect ourselves from this pain. And now there's a third person in the room. There's us as an adult. So I'm 38. I've got my protective part, which started younger, but really kind of key roots around 11 years old, 10 and 11 years old. My protective part developed from the time I was 11 till about 18, 19 years old. And that part didn't trust me as an adult for many years, because what happened is we no longer see that child as somebody to be loved and nurtured the way that we always longed for it to. We now have become the same version of the adults around us when we were kids, saying, come on, you should be faster. You should be over this. You should be better. You should be more productive. You shouldn't be feeling this anymore. Let's go. Let's go. We can't take time off. We can't do this. You messed up. And so that protected part goes, well, heck no, I'm not going to trust you. I'm not letting you in. So I'm going to have to keep using my defenses. So I know I'm saying a lot. I'm talking a lot. But if you come back to how do we first validate, which is going to allow us to get at the idea that there's even another version of ourselves in the room, then start to consider that there's different parts of ourself that are playing these roles. The biggest reason we are stuck is because we keep developing rules, resolutions, plans, next steps that are still contributing to that. Well, hurry up, be better, fix it.
Fix it.
Why do you even have a problem? Rather than saying, of course, food is a problem. Of course you feel shame. Of course you feel lonely and undeserving of love and connection. You've spent your whole life waiting to be told that you are allowed to be in the room just as you are. I'm not going to shame you for eating that second donut in secret. I'm going to love you knowing that you are just trying to move through the world and not experience the depth of pain that we have spent our life trying to run from.
So powerful. So powerful. I'd love to hear a little bit about your own story. Any amount that you want to share with us in terms of, kind of like with looking back, you kind of talked a little bit about your protective parts and kind of how they were developed, but sometimes it can really help to hear a story and kind of see, oh, okay, I can see how maybe that would like making sense of it.
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up, my mom was a single mom and I'm an only child. And I was very much my mom's miracle at the time that I was born. So she had had 3 miscarriages and a stillborn before I was born. She struggled with some pretty severe mental health issues and substance use. And she was told she was never going to get pregnant. And so when she got pregnant with me, she stopped doing all drugs. She stopped doing all these other activities. And she was like, all in, I'm a mom. And in that, she became a nurse. She just did a complete 180 in how she lived her life. Now, that worked for a period of time because I was enough of a charge and I
Mm.
brought her enough joy early on that she never had to deal with anything underneath because that had been enough temporarily. But over time, if we don't deal with things underneath, they are going to circle their heads back up. It's just a matter of when, where, and how. And so my mom, a lot of her unresolved trauma, and knowing now what I know, my mom very much has complex PTSD. She has had more trauma that than I could list in an entire notebook. But that wasn't a language that was used. And once she started struggling with substance use, you're just an addict and you're sort of reduced to that, especially back then, 30 years ago. And so that was just a different experience. And I think growing up around her, I always had a little bit too much say and a little bit too much power because I was really on a pedestal for her. So
Mhm.
everything was always centered around me, for better or for worse. And I was naturally pretty high achieving. I did well in school. I would do all the activities. I would score well in all of these activities. I would typically get trophies or get placed in things. And so naturally, I was doing pretty well. And then my mom relapsed. She started to struggle when I was about 9 or 10, and my whole world sort of imploded. And looking back on those first 9 or 10 years, I can see now how much of a parentified child I was, which I think
Yes.
is a really key piece for people to think about. I would, for example, if my mom dated anybody, she would take me on the dates and I decided whether or not we liked them.
Wow.
I got a lot of power that was not appropriate for a 6 or a 7 or an 8-year-old. And so I was this sort of person in place of partner. And then as my mom really struggled with her addiction, I became the person in place of parent. I got myself to school. I was truant for a while because I couldn't get to school. I was on the outskirts of a country town. And so I would coordinate getting my homework from people. So I was at least keeping up with the work so I wouldn't fail. I was doing the grocery orders from the Schwann's man. If anybody remembers the
Oh,
Schwann's
yes.
delivery trucks,
Yes.
I was doing all of those things while my mom was either depressed or high or working. And so there was this dynamic of I'm just responsible for taking care of everything. At these core points of things happening in your life, kind of 0 to 10, you're starting to establish a sense of identity and connection in the world. And so we can see in my case, my identity became taking care of people and being emotionally responsible for others. My guess is that resonates with a lot of you listening. In some way, shape, or form, you became the person responsible for other people's emotions, and you were charged with a responsibility that was unfairly yours. Well, as you get older, that starts to come in more and more. So in my case, I moved to several different family homes. I, at one point, was kicked out of one of the houses because my aunt had her own mental health stuff and was just not able to have me there anymore. I think everybody thought this was going to be a couple weeks. My mom ended up getting in trouble, and as a nurse, she was forging prescriptions and to get medicine, to get the narcotics that she wanted. She ended up being given the opportunity to go to treatment. So I think everybody at that time was like, you just go to treatment once and you're fine. Anyone that's ever known anyone with an addiction, and or if we're talking about food on this podcast, that's not how easy it is. And so my mom left in 5th grade, and I've never lived with her again. So what was supposed to be a few months turned into my forever. And so I hopped around different family homes, and going into different schools, into different places, you start to chameleon. So now I'm not only the person responsible for other people's emotions, but I have to make sure that I chameleon myself into everybody around me. And that experience, I think, is also pretty common for people that struggle with people pleasing and food related disorders. They've often been that person holding everything for everyone else.
Mm.
All of that started to kind of reach a head end of high school, beginning of college. My struggles with food were never around body image. I had body image issues, especially with what I know now to be trauma. I ebbed and flowed with weight gain and weight loss related to the trauma I was going through. And I had a lot of friends with eating disorders. And I was always, in a way, jealous that I didn't want to do those things because they were thinner
Mm.
and I had more weight on my body. And so I had those thoughts in the back of my mind. But in college, again, I was surrounded by eating disorders. I think honestly, what changed was just I hung out with mostly guys in high school and we ate Wendy's and McDonald's and all those things. I played sports, but I was eating probably way more of that kind of food than my body needed and wanted. And so when my diet changed just by having to eat at the cafeterias at the school, I dropped a pretty significant amount of weight. And so I was always still, even after I left my mom, trying to be the perfect student, the one that handled everything. I was never mad at my friends, even if they did something wrong. It was much easier if they were mad at me. That was safer. But I never wanted to be mad at them because if I was mad, they might just leave. Why would they put the effort in? And so if they were mad at me, I at least could do something. I felt like I was in control of making sure that everything would be okay. So I had that. And then the food piece came in. And suddenly, when I lost weight, not only was I the high grades and the people pleaser that everybody wanted to be around because I made everybody feel special, now I'm thin and thin in a way that is culturally idealized. And all of those things played in together where I started to have just metrics of perfection. Because the more you exist at those higher levels and the more feedback that you get that people like it, you're accepted, you're longed for, the more your body goes, well, oh my gosh, we got to keep doing this. This is
Yes.
what works. And so it
Yes.
was never a conscious, I'm not good enough, so I have to do this. There would be moments. I remember one time going to a new school and my aunt didn't buy me new clothes. She was very upset about me still being in her house. She also had 3 kids. I don't know her financial situation, but I had this one pair of jeans that still fit me that had pink ties on the side. So there was no way of getting around knowing you wore them to school. Like some jeans we could wear every day, no one's going to
Right.
know. But people knew I only had one pair of jeans and I would get made fun of for that. So I remember having shame around specific things, or at a time somebody made fun of me for having really hairy arms. And I remember going, oh gosh, there's something wrong with my body hair, or there's something wrong with my body size or what I'm wearing. But they were never enough overtly to drive me to say, well, this one thing now is that I have to change. It was the sort of subconscious behavior changes that my body was tweaking and doing to make me sort of approach this really messed up version of perfection, to have everything to look a specific way. I stayed in a relationship for almost 9 years that I hated because I wanted to be the person that married their high school sweetheart and everything was perfect. And I had his perfect family that I married into, and I looked this way and I had a 4.0 and I was going to go to medical school, even though I flippin' hated medicine. I'm now married to a doctor, which is ironic, but like nothing about that brought me joy in any way, shape, or form. But everything was about meeting these bullet points to maintain this version of self that the world seemed to want me to be so that I was a part of or worth being a part of their group, their selection, their effort. And all of that, looking back, really was the theme of shame. I just didn't have the language to know it's what it was
Right.
and how it showed up. And once it gets its roots, now again, it's whack-a-mole. I am able to let that go with my body, but I'm not necessarily able to let that go with the shame that comes up around being the perfect parent or having the perfect house. There's always a risk now because you're supposed to be able to accomplish this. And what does it mean about me if I can't?
Yes, so powerful. And it's like you can see how your your system, right? Your internal
Mm-hmm.
system really developed. Okay, here are all of the ways that if we control all of these factors,
Yes.
then we'll have that love, that belonging, that connection. And even though it is nothing compared to what you really want for yourself, this
Mm-hmm.
is who I need to be in order to make sure I have that love, belonging, and connection.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
even remember my father-in-law. So I've been with my husband for 15 years. And so I was 22 at the time that we met. And I remember going to a concert with his family. We were going to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and I got out of the car. It was winter in Wisconsin. It was cold. And I had kind of the epitome for folks that remember like the American Eagle Abercrombie business casual style. I probably had more of like an express pair of pants on, a little bit more fancy, but might have been jeans. I don't know. But I had on an outfit that doesn't really relate to my style at all. We've now interacted multiple times. You probably see me every time in like a sweatshirt and a braid. Like I am not that version of a person.
Yeah.
But I remember my father-in-law coming up to me, and to this day, I have no idea how he saw me, especially knowing him now, where I like he's an emotionally aware person, but just the level he saw me, I was like, where did this come from? He came up to me and he goes, you don't have to dress like that for other people. You don't have to wear these things that you don't like. And I was like, how does he know I don't like this? How does he
Wow.
know I'm uncomfortable? And so I remember moments like that where people would see me, but the risk was still too high. I remember in my master's program, even knowing what I knew, I was in recovery from my eating disorder. I knew my perfection standards were a problem. She said, what if you didn't turn in the last assignment for my class and you got a B? What if we just did that? And I said, fun theory. I won't be doing that. That will not be happening. And I know you're trying to prove to me I would be fine. And logically, I know that if I didn't wear high heels, I would have still been a beautiful, worthy, lovely human. I know that if I got a B, nobody was going to walk out of my therapy office and say, you're going to be a crappy therapist. I know that if I have a mess on my counter when somebody comes over or my kid has a impromptu play date, nobody cares. It's not the knowing that I have to solve. It's up here. The logic brain is not working when shame kicks in because shame is fear.
Yes.
Shame is back here in my lizard brain. It does not care what the logic says. It says, I'm not willing to roll the dice because the if might as well be a when.
Yes.
And that is something I don't have the ability to exist in. And so I've worked through it, but it's still definitely a thing I'll have to address the rest of my life.
Yeah. So there's two things I want to make sure that we touch on. One is you mentioned early on, and you've definitely given some examples of this, but I want to make sure we can give something to the listeners where they can really grasp and take for themselves. You talked early on kind of in the definition of shame and how we end up masking, maybe
Mm,
doing other things. And you talked about masking versus kind of living into our values.
yes.
Talk to us a little bit more about what masking might look like and how we can, kind of go more into kind of values based living or decisions instead.
Yes. So one thing I'll make sure that I do is I have a handout that I made that's called Who Am I? And it really helps to go deeper on this. So I'll make sure that we have the link for that so that you're not, listeners, just trying to do this on your own with reflection. Sometimes even if you don't like the way my handout is written, it can spark something for you. But
Yes.
I'm just going to describe the process. So if you think about versions of ourself and self-disclosure, we are not sharing our full and open self with the entire world. That's not the goal of authentic living, to be radically open with every single person that you meet and to consistently be the same version of yourself. What we're saying when we're living in alignment with ourself is that there's an us sort of in the center core, our relationship with ourself. That is our most intimate relationship. We know more, we feel more about ourselves than anyone else. And then you're going to put a circle around it. And that circle is going to be the closest connections that you have. Maybe that's a partner, a best friend, a parent, somebody else in your life. A therapist could even be in that innermost circle, but people that are really close that you feel like you can be the most vulnerable with. And then you're going to keep making more and more circles to go out further and further and further. What I share about myself is going to get smaller. It's going to be less and less as I go out of that inner point of the circle. So when I'm interacting with the barista at the coffee shop I love to go with, I might ask them how something is going, their new dog training is going, or they might ask me about how my daughter's doing in kindergarten. We can know things about each other, but I'm not going to go up to them and say, yeah, last night I spent 2 hours trying to talk myself out of the shame of feeling like I'm a terrible mom. I had this interaction with Everly. I'm really stuck with that. Or Jordan and I are not on the same page. What do I do? I'm not going to disclose that. The key piece, though, is I'm consistently the same version of myself everywhere I go. I
Mm.
feel comfortable and confident whether I'm in a zone 1, we'll say that's maybe the first circle after us, or a zone 10. It's the same version of me. It's just different layers of exposure that I give to the world. But if I'm coming into my core or I'm talking to other people, I don't hide anything and have to become a different version of myself when I'm talking to other people. I just might not share every thought in my head with every person around me. Masking is when we don't have that central core that everything is built around. It's all sorts of, think of kind of pinpoints all over a piece of paper that are all different versions of ourselves that are all, I think about like the Sherlock Holmes giant crime webs. And if you look at that and you think, okay, well, if this situation happens and this person's here and this thing is happening, this is who I have to be. If this situation happens and this person is here and this thing is happening, this is who I have to be. And when I'm alone, I don't have to be any of those people. So that's when I can just finally take a breath. But we haven't learned how to deal with those breaths of distress. So we're actually going to just eat, or we're going to mask, we're going to binge watch TV, we're going to do something else just so we don't have to feel while we're over here, because we got to have enough energy so we can go back over and put all those other different versions on. And so it's not almost like the China dolls or the Russian doll. Is it Russian dolls? Where they're all the nesting dolls? Russian dolls.
Yes.
Think of that as the authentic living. There's versions of ourself, but they're all connected to the same piece, the same values, the same tenets. We can feel that sense of breath when we're in those spaces. And then when we're masking, this is the me that no one can see. And then here's the mask I wear when I'm a mom. Here's the mask I wear when I'm a partner. Here's the mask I wear when I'm at the gym. Here's the mask I wear when I'm on my podcast, when I'm on social media. And they all look a little bit different. The other key piece is the version of ourselves, that innermost self, we try to keep it as far away as possible. And the masks are typically in opposition to that. So this is a truth about me. No one can know that.
Yes.
This is the truth about me. I have to hide that. That's how we can tell it's masking versus that aligned living.
When you said that, this is the truth about me and no one can know that, it just took me straight back to my very first binge in college, in my dorm room, surrounded by all the candy bar wrappers, and just like, nobody can know. Nobody can know this terrible thing that I have just done. Yeah.
Yeah. And that automatic detachment that you had to say, well, now this version of me, one, I'm ashamed of this version. I'm judging this version. I am not loving. I am being punitive to this version.
Absolutely.
So
I want it to go away.
Yes. Right there is when that third version of self comes in and the protective part goes, oh, we can't trust Jane anymore. Jane's not here for us. Jane doesn't accept us. And then you start to see that disconnection. And now it's, get it in the closet, get it somewhere else. No one else can see it. Now you've just said nobody can ever accept that part, thereby instilling shame no matter what you do is going to run rampant through every masked version that you have, because you've just given it full permission by saying, this is a secret because I have declared this part of me is not lovable because I won't love it in the room.
Yes. So let's go from here to the next question. This episode right now, we're talking, it's early January. So we are very much into new year goals, resolutions. This year, things are going to be different. And when this episode comes out, it will be kind of mid-February timeframe. And the truth is, for a lot of people, what they are imagining right now for themselves in mid to late February may not end up being what actually transpires. Let's kind of visit that. Let's talk about that so that we can kind of reflect back as you're listening today in February, thinking back. If you're listening live, many people will be listening to this months and years later, but let's just talk about when we get to any place in life and we're not where we wanted to be.
I think one of the things that, if we come back to that idea of control, oftentimes our goals are a desire to control, again, on that external locus. I feel fat, or I am fat. I should lose weight. So my New Year's resolution is I'm going to go to the gym every single day and I'm going to lose all this weight. Maybe your body would feel better if you lost some weight. Maybe your body would feel better if you changed your relationship with food a bit. But nothing about what you just described to me sounds like anything that I would be excited about, is to just basically live in this, well, here's the problem, I got to fix it, here's the thing that I'm supposed to do, and there you go. The other thing we do when we get so focused on control is we remove the emotional and physiological experience of being a human.
Yes.
So I don't know if anyone else has ever done this, but I am guilty of overing. I overdo, I overinvest, I overschedule, all the overing.
Yes.
If you look at my schedule sometimes, it is beautifully overwhelming because there's so many different colors and things and stuff I'm supposed to do. Now, one of the things that I would often do is almost every minute of my day was scheduled. I have to be up by this time. I have to do these things. When Everly goes to bed at night, I have to get at least another hour of work in to catch up on these things. I've got to meal prep at this time. I've got to get this thing done. I've got to have this thing happen. What I'm doing is I'm removing the emotional and physiological experience. What if I sleep like crap? What if I was up all night and I got no sleep and I actually don't want to be up at 5 a.m. because my body needs an extra hour? Well, I can't do that. I have to be up because I have the stuff I have to do. My daughter's sick. What am I supposed to do? I have 10 things I have to do. So I'm either going to end up not spending time with my daughter, forcing myself to get things done, or I'm going to sit there shaming myself the whole time I'm with my daughter thinking, how am I going to squeeze this in tomorrow? Maybe I'll stay up late tonight. I bet she might be up in the middle of the night and coughing, so I might not be able to get up in the morning, but I could be okay being tired. So maybe I'll try to get up at 4:30 instead of at 5. And then maybe I could cancel this one thing that wasn't super necessary to get this thing done. Or you know what? I have coffee with my friends on Thursday, so I'll cancel that because I can get a few more things in. So we start to watch how we, instead of going, sometimes I'm emotionally not in the right headspace. Sometimes physically I'm not in the right headspace, and or sometimes the people in my life are physically and emotionally not in the headspace. When we create resolutions or goals, one of the things you can watch for is, did you put your goal in a vacuum? Or is your goal going to fit into the most complicated, chaotic day of your life? And when we sit down and we think about, okay, your goal is you want to go to the gym 7 days a week and you're going to do all this stuff, just at base level, I'd say, let's not, but let's just play it out. Okay, what happens when I live in Portland, Oregon? It doesn't snow very often, but when it does, the whole city shuts down. Nobody goes anywhere. What are you going to do then? Well, I'm going to work out at home. I'm going to get my workout done at home. Okay. But you're also going to be at home with your kids or your husband or someone else, and you don't really have the space anymore to work out the way that you want to. What are you going to do? I'll make sure that I have to get something done. Okay, great. What if you didn't? And you start to notice that they're like, no, I'm going to have to get it done. I'm going to have to do it. And the more you start to poke a hole, the more discomfort there is. And so what we look at is typically goals that are shame-driven are inflexible, rigid, and again, remove the physiological and the emotional experience of being human. So you're trying to control what you can't control. You're trying to control the future. What we want to look at instead of any goal is, what was the value under that? What was the healing under that? If we're talking about all of our relationships with food, what's the actual value that we have around our relationship with our body and our food? Because I can tell you, when I was deep in my eating disorder, none of my goals around diet, around fitness, around health were rooted to the value that I have about loving myself unconditionally. They were never rooted to that. They were never rooted to a sense. I remember having influenza, legitimate influenza, and believing that I should still get to the gym, that I should still be able to work out. I should still be able to eat a certain way. I can't possibly eat ice cream. I didn't move enough. I didn't count for those calories. Or for telling myself I can never binge again. And then one time that I did binge, going, well, see, I'm terrible. I'm a failure. I'm never going to be able to move forward. So looking at that, I know, again, I'm saying a lot. And the goal by saying a lot is you're going to pick one thing that you go, boom, I can hold that. I can catch it. It's here. The piece to ask yourself is, are you designing a life that you would enjoy living? And if your goals are always rooted to shame and rigidity, all we're doing is creating more misery just through a whack-a-mole. It's just a new lens to hate our life. So, okay, you don't love your relationship with food or your body right now. You're absolutely allowed to. You are absolutely allowed to not like your relationship with food or your body right now. But what would it look like to live a life that you could enjoy your relationship with it? How would that look and feel? And what would happen when you went out to dinner and you really liked the bread in the bread basket and you had 2 rolls? How would you act differently if it was a life that you were excited? to have, if it was a value that you wanted to be, would you enjoy that role? Or would you come home later and say, well, I already started binging, I might as well binge more? Or look, it doesn't even count. I can't even go to dinner with people without scarfing down more food. All we're doing is creating misery. And so coming back to that, that's always whenever I think about any change I'm going to make is how am I fitting in a full version of myself? Meaning, how do I account for and give compassion and grace for the fact that we are emotional beings with physiological experiences that don't really care what our schedule says and how concrete our goals are?
Yes.
And that I don't need to meet every goal all the time to be good, to be worthy. I need to find goals and I guess ideals maybe that are in alignment with someone I'm excited to get out of bed with every day,
Mm.
because that's ultimately where we're trying to go. And that's ultimately where the healing is going to come, where the relationship with food no longer feels like it's the central tenet of our lives.
Yes. So good. I love that. Just that visual of somebody that I'm excited to get out of bed with every day and the
Hmm.
value of unconditionally loving yourself. And it's like, I hear like kind of this common here's some common threads that I'm pulling from our conversation, kind of as we wrap this up and we come to a close. Here are some of the threads that I'm pulling is really thinking about what are the values that you have for yourself, making sure that those values are present in every decision, really kind of asking the question, am I trying to make these changes or this thing that I'm going after, this thing that I want for myself? Is it tied to a value that's really important to a life I want to live that would be amazing to live? Or am I trying to control something? Am I trying to fit in? Am I trying to just be loved? Am I trying to fix a problem? The energy behind both of those is so different. Then the other kind of like the golden thread when you were talking about the circles, right?
Hmm.
If I'm this person in the center and then I'm the same person as my circles get bigger, it's just what I'm sharing and
Hmm.
what I'm sharing, the amount of time I'm spending, whatever may be different as I go out. But I almost can see that golden thread of the value that starts in that center and
Yes.
goes out where I literally am the same person. What I'm sharing may be different, but I'm not having to kind of manipulate myself depending on where I am. And just thinking about how much more energy is required
Yes.
to try to manipulate yourself, to try to think about, okay, who do I need to be in this scenario? Um,
Hmm.
or to try to control everything and fix everything and show up or be this person that I don't even want to be because I think I need to show up this way in order to be accepted or approved or whatever. And so like kind of all of those themes. And the last theme that I think is so important that you've mentioned several different times, but I really want to pull out for our listeners is this is a lifelong journey. We are not here to get rid of shame. We are not here to never have a challenging day with our bodies or with food. It's like, I think sometimes, I don't know if it's our brain, if it is some of the messaging that we receive in some of the health self-help areas, but somehow so many of us have this picture of this happily ever after where we never mess up, where we never feel broken, where we just want to get out of bed every day and we're so excited and we love our bodies and we know exactly how much to eat and everything feels, like rainbows and daisies. And that's just not the human experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there is no human out there who is where they want to be, who
Right.
has the relationships that they want to have, whether it's with other humans or with themselves or with their bodies or with food. I mean, literally every single human is working on their own relationships with their loved ones, with themselves, with food, with their bodies, with their business, with their finances. Every single person we're all on a journey. And so to kind of think that there's just this like, I can only be okay when I get to this place, which never actually exists. It almost like it takes us away from the ability to really go after and design, and as much as possible, given whatever our body and our circumstances and the world gives us on any given day, to then show up. How can I show up rooted in these values, rooted in this self with this unconditional love, rather than trying to just get to some destination or control everything or, try to
Yeah.
fix all of these problems.
Yeah. And I think the thing I think most about in all of this is what do I what did I need to have or to hear
Mhm.
when I was 10
Yes.
and I started to have these feelings? And sure, the 10-year-old self, my worst day is much different than my worst day at 38. I know that pain has gotten bigger and deeper and it looks different as you get older. We're not asking ourselves enough, though, to go back and have empathy for that version. And when we do that, it's what did I need? What
Mm.
did I want? And what would I have told her if I could have been that adult in the room? If I could have given her what she needed, what did she need to hear?
Mm.
And she didn't need to hear, you're too fat. You're not productive enough. Work harder.
That's not
She
pretty.
needed to hear, I love you.
Mm.
You don't have to do everything for everyone. Your job isn't to make the world happy all the time and to never be an inconvenience. It's okay. And once we get to that story, that message that we needed, that becomes the underbelly for the work we do now. If
Yes.
I can hold that, gosh, I have enough data to prove anybody that relates to anything, any struggle with food, you're the people pleaser, you're the perfectionist, you've done a ton, and you have figured out a way to engage in whatever this is with master secrecy and articulation of different points. I mean, there is so much data to our capacity to do really hard things. We are amazing. We're just channeling it in the wrong way. And so when I think about that, like that's sometimes where I find the humor in it. Man, I am very good at scheduling. I am very good at managing numbers when my eating disorder was all
Yep.
numbers driven. I am very good at managing a budget and keeping secrets so nobody ever knew what was happening. Like there are so many ways I can twist it in my head and go, so how could I take those skills and apply them to something that aligns with my values
Mm.
and not something that continues to give my shame so much airtime?
Mm.
Because those skills are transferable. We can choose to apply them towards something else. We can choose to have so much more fun using them. They've just gotten stuck in this one area. And so, again, what did you need?
Mm.
What do you wish somebody would have said to you? And now, what can you say to yourself? And what would that look like the next time that you have a binge?
Yes.
How could you give that version of you what the 5-year-old version of you needed? And how might that change how you move forward from that experience and the way you're able to approach whatever your healing journey looks like the next day and the next day?
So powerful. That's so good. We're going to leave it right there because that is such a powerful question. And Kyira has given you so many things to think about today. So, as she said, pick one thing that really resonates with you. The one thing that was like, oh, I want to do that. Or, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. Pick one thing and apply it. Take this insight, turn it into wisdom. I heard this years and years ago, and I love it. Wisdom is knowledge applied. So we have
Mm,
given you a lot of knowledge here. And now the invitation for you is to go and apply any amount of this wisdom that you've had today and just see what impact it makes on you, especially inside. It's the inside game. It's not the outside game that matters as much as that's what we try to control and change and everything else. It really is the inside game. So Kyira, thank you so much for being here. If any of the listeners are like, wow, this woman is amazing, I want to learn more about shame or what the work that Kyira does in the world, how can people find you?
I think the best place to go is my website, adversityrising.com. And there you can find links to connect to me on social media, on YouTube, my podcast, all the different things. But that's kind of a one-stop shop. And you can definitely just click that connect section and just shoot me an email if you have questions on where to start or how to find and access any and all of the resources that I have. I try to have things that are free and low cost and work themselves up depending on what the support looks like and what resources you have available to you.
Amazing. Well, I will make sure that is included in the show notes along with the other resource that you mentioned. We'll make sure that's included. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for listening to Binge Breakthrough. You can find the show notes and any resources mentioned at bingebreakthrough.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to have future episodes delivered to you each Wednesday. And remember, your 5-star rating and review will help others discover these life-changing concepts. See you next week.